Welcome back, kings, queens, everything in between, to another episode of the Peasant Party Podcast. I am your host, Charlotte Warren. It's Friday. Heck yeah. And then, but to my right, more importantly, I've got a fantastic guest. Say what's good.
Hello, everyone. My name's Owen Moore. I run the Dating with Owen TikTok page, which I'm hoping, lives to see a few more days, but we'll see. And happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. Yeah, the TikTok thing, it is weird. Like, I'm seeing a lot of people do these, like, signing off, goodbye, farewell.
Right.
And, like, I feel like I want to take the, people who have followed me, like, I want to give them directions on where to go. People seem interested in following me wherever I go. But it's just, like, it's hard. Like, I actually started to make something. I'm like, I have to actually, like, write something. And then I got, like, kind of choked up. It was weird. It was very weird.
It's funny because TikTok went from an app where a lot of people were like, oh, that's like a kid's app, to, wow, I learned how to bake. I learned how to sew. I learned how to tie a tie, a lot of like life hacks. And then it kind of put people in a position where they could feel like their voices were heard. So people have like that emotional connection to it. And they almost feel like they're losing like a core part of their life. So hopefully they can come to, some kind of resolution and TikTok can stay.
Yeah. Like I'm firmly believe, and I will say this with my chest, that TikTok has done more for the American people than anyone in that geriatric ward we call Congress ever has. Like, just the amount of small businesses, like the amount of like small town, people doing community theater acting who have gotten roles in like legitimate movies. The people who have like, just really like been able to take their careers to the next level, like that small business, like that goofy thing they invented that they shared with their friends. Like, oh my gosh, like this is something I could sell on TikTok Shop. And all of a sudden it's like, it was one place you could get like grow a new audience. Like, it's just insane. And it makes me so sad, like how cavalier Congress is about getting rid of it. Like, it's not even just like, it's like, oh, it's not even like, okay, hey, we know that you've done this. Like, there's no acknowledgement of like what it's done for people, or that like, here we'll help you, we'll help you find another platform. And it's just like, oh, the Kids Yancey app.
Like, good luck.
Yeah. And then like,
figure it out.
Because I know so many people too, where it's like, they're not on TikTok, and like, they're people who maybe see reels, like the people who will just like watch reels on Instagram, like, oh, you TikTokers, blah, blah, blah. It's like,
that was posted 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. To someone who like is only on Instagram, like, yeah, well, you hear people that are big on TikTok and you think of like Instagram influencer types who have never worked a day in their life. It's like, no, this is like where the
regular everyday people,
like actual creatives who are doing something are like. And I would argue that, the TikToks that make their way to the Instagram people that make them judge TikTok negatively, that's more of an Instagram, like a reflection of who the Instagram people are than TikTok.
Yeah.
I will die on that hill.
I mean, I definitely see a lot of, like value there for sure. And I know personally of, somebody I went to college with who started kind of doing like funny kind of skits, almost like Disney branded type content, is a really big, Swiftie, and it's launched her into going into like TikTok conventions. I think she was just in California. Like,
wait, who is it?
Her name's Bridget McFadden.
Sounds familiar.
I'm not entirely sure what her TikTok handle is, but yeah, she's doing extremely well, like 200-300K on there, blue check verified, the whole shebang. Has done commercials with Frank's hot sauce, like a different, a lot of brands, and she's been able to grow her exposure. That's taken her into other avenues. And then you think about the restaurants that have gotten the exposure, who have gotten to, rep friends, hey, oh my, we should try dinner here before, places that they would have never heard of without the platform. So there's value there.
So yeah, so much. And like, yeah, I just think of, wait, who of all the TikTok people that maybe you've gotten to know, who's the biggest success story, and who do you encourage people to follow elsewhere?
The biggest, gosh, I mean, if it's not Bridget, because I mean, she's been a rock star and has been doing really well. Oh my goodness, I would definitely have to say, probably you. Honestly,
thank you.
I'm
means
really,
a lot.
because most of the people I can think of were big outside of TikTok. So their content might not be like the best, but it's just because of who they are. They're becoming famous. Or, I mean, I'm trying to think about in terms of just valuable actual content where people can learn versus, oh, this is a hot girl, like smash the follow.
Yeah.
It's like, you don't give a damn what she's actually posting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say you definitely, I would say coming from being like a regular everyday, person, like, the rest of us, and then building it for sure. I would definitely say there's a lot to learn there.
Well, thank you. That really means a lot.
Of course, no problem.
That means a lot. yeah, like I'm trying to think of where I was going. Yeah, I would say like my success story would be, and I've got to just give a shout out to. Do you follow Ian Bick?
No, but I am familiar with his story.
Yeah.
I don't follow it.
Insane. So he he got on to TikTok. He runs the Locked In with Ian Bick podcast now. He's obviously taken everything like beyond TikTok, but that's where he was like a he was a Uber driver or something. I think maybe he got kicked off of that because he has when he was like
Some
18.
felonies, right?
Yeah, he ran like a Ponzi. He just opened a nightclub and ran like a Ponzi scheme and went to prison for 3 years when he was like 18.
Yeah.
And the way he got onto TikTok and just started telling his story because he doesn't look like someone who would go to prison, and just started answering silly questions about prison, like, oh, gay, like, is gay for the stay true, like just that sort of thing. And then, people were interested about it in his story, like, and then he's like, I'll start a podcast. And then it's turned into like he goes and speaks at prison, like just like talks about like legitimate prison reform issues, like helping people like, get back into, the workforce after leaving prison. And it's like, holy shit, like the way you've taken the bricks people threw at you to build a castle is insane. And it wouldn't be that without TikTok.
Yeah, I definitely think, especially when it comes to like the prison talk, I guess people will say it, space, there's a lot, I feel like there's just so much opportunity there because let's be honest, most average everyday Americans have no actual concept of what prison is actually like.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you see the movies, you might see the TV shows, but that's not even really, getting to like the meat and the potatoes. So a lot of people almost have that like area of mystique and intrigue when it comes to prison.
Yeah.
And obviously a lot of people want to like know what it's like without having to know what it's like, without having to go themselves. So when people kind of like pull that curtain back and give you like the real, it's like people are just like fascinated. And that's where a lot of these creators have been able to just explode because it's like, holy cow. And it's just real everyday, like, the real shit.
Yeah. My favorite is when like a person in prison like gets a phone and then they're like running around the prison. It's like the bad quality. They're like, he's got a phone, and like just like dancing to like weird songs. And, like it's so freaking funny. Like they like
like, is anyone gonna see them on like the TL? Like
I don't know.
CO.
If I were a CO, I would honestly like just like look the other way, just because I would find that so entertaining. But like it's always that's entertaining. And then would you ever come across like prison wife TikTok or people that were like going in to write a prisoner and like falling in love with prisoners?
I mean, I know their story has come back into the public eye for the last few months. The Menendez brothers.
Oh, yeah.
They have a Netflix doc, a Netflix movie type thing going on, and they're back, in the public eye. And I know that's how one of the brothers found his wife, was just on some letter writing campaign stuff, and been married for, I don't know, 20 plus some odd years. And
well, one of them left his wife for a 21-year-old just recently. I think the one that the wife stuck around is like someone that was like a childhood friend. Okay. But like one of them, and it's just like, like there's nothing illegal or wrong with that, but people are like, oh damn, this is kind of a crazy, slimy look as you're like trying to pitch yourself to get out of prison. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm like, a lot of people, it's kind of like, do you think they'll get out? Like, the times have changed. There's a lot of, details that are coming out. Not to excuse what they did, because at the end of the day, they did do it. But I guess it's becoming a situation where people are getting, I guess you could say, like, understanding or even sympathetic about the circumstances in which they have to live.
Well, I mean, if you compare it to Gypsy Rose Blanchard,
so we'll see.
Yeah, it's like that, and then if they were charged with literally anything except murder, they would have been out by now. They've served 30 years.
Probably, yeah.
So it's kind of like, even if they it's not so much like, they're innocent, like wipe away the charges. It's like, do you downgrade this to like intentional like manslaughter versus, like an excessive force kind of, they thought it was self-defense. I don't know.
Yeah, for my thing, it's like, because you mentioned like Gypsy Rose, and it's I kind of feel like in a way that whole situation feels a little like exploitive.
Yeah.
Because it's very clear that for all intents and purposes, she's had a very traumatic life and missed out on very key developmental, I guess you could say, milestones and aspects of being able to grow it and live her life, and it kind of shows. So it's kind of like she got out of prison and people were plastering her all over social media, but it's like this girl kind of like needs to find herself, reintegrate into society, and quite frankly, maybe get some professional help and services, not be going on the red carpet. Yeah. So it kind of just felt like a little like exploitive, and you can obviously very much tell that there's a lot of stuff like that she needs, support on. And I think society's like we just want to jump to glorify and who cares who's getting hurt in the process? Like, I just want to start like a star type of thing, and it's like that's not always the best.
Yeah, it's like it's tough, and that's even like she even has like family that she was able to go home to, like her father who like wasn't in her life, because of her mother, being an evil psychopath. Like has like stepped in a way that's like very loving and seems supportive, and like I couldn't even imagine a situation where someone didn't have that.
Yeah, and a lot of people traditionally who are leaving prison don't have that.
Yeah,
they don't have millions of dollars waiting for them in exclusive stories with these highly publicized newspapers and TV shows. They don't have millions of fans writing them, tweeting about them, whatever. They don't have the social media discourse around them. A lot of them maybe are given a handful of dollars, maybe a bus ticket, and it's like, all right, here's your probation officer, or here's your parole officer. Do you need to like keep up with? I wish you luck, and it's like off you go. Welcome back to society where you've been away for X amount of years, and they don't have the resources that these people might have. And it's like, well, what about them?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But okay, you're back in DC.
Sure am.
You're able. I feel like you're able to give a very good, fair comparison. DC Austin dating. What is DC? Oh yeah, what is dating in DC or the landscape look like? Either your experience or anyone else's like right now, especially as we're about to, have a transfer of power in a few days.
That's really interesting. Especially when you mention the whole transfer of power. Because with the new administration coming in, that means there's going to be new staffers coming in. So there's potentially a new crop of potential dating people out there for those who are playing the game. And dating in DC, not much has changed, especially in that aspect, because it's such a career-driven city that everyone's like go 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 go. Almost like I'll find time to find it's like I'll just find time to date, and it's like, well, if you don't really prioritize it, it's not going to happen for you.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are kind of like, well, the pool's filled with feces, the pool's filled with XYZ, and dating here sucks. But it's like, if you look at it, every person in every city is going to say dating.
Everyone says that about their city for some reason. Like, if it's like, oh, you're blaming politics for why people are douchey. Here in Austin, it's the cowboy douche, like whatever. Yeah.
And I noticed, especially here in Austin, it's much more of I don't say this in a bad manner, but things are a little bit more light. So almost you could even say more like surface level.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of hard to build those like deeper, like multi-layered connections with people because there's just so many options.
Yeah.
And Austin's extremely transient, just like DC. So people are coming and going. They got, you got the tech bros, you've got the Instagram models, you've got the reality TV characters or the almost reality TV characters.
Yeah.
You've got the people who are just here for a couple years to get their career established, the people who've never left, the people who were born and raised to Austin. So you have like a very unique set of characters from all over America, California, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, you name it. So dating in Austin's really interesting because you kind of go through different variations of the same thing. And, a lot of it's revolving around being outdoors or drinking alcohol.
Yeah.
So it's like fun, but it's not always the easiest to find like meaningful connections.
True. I think another thing you'd probably see in DC is like people are very, they're outspoken about maybe their views in a way that, people in Austin, maybe they won't define themselves as some sort of political party, or because it's not as big of a deal to them, maybe they don't share their opinions, or there's sort of this feeling of like everyone's nice, or like I feel like you hear way more, like a lot of stories about people like, pretending they're not conservative or something. And like I'm firmly of a belief that like, that situation is that it's not so much like that that person is a liar. It's just that they don't view themselves as like a right winger or something. They're just like, they do see themselves as middle of the road because they're not waving a MAGA hat anywhere. And it's like, versus like, I think in DC, like people, they know what they are. They maybe work for that party, so they're very passionate about it. So those views are out there earlier versus this sort of like, kind of dance around it until, you feel like you're too invested sort of thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I like to joke, like, people in DC look at almost political parties as like sports teams.
Hmm.
And people very well will not date somebody who they have friends who've actively filtered out guys who identify as Republican, girls who identify as Republican, girls who identify as Democrats, and vice versa.
Hmm.
And it's interesting because politics like rule the world in
Hmm.
Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Whereas in Austin, people don't really necessarily care. And I
Hmm.
remember like I've maybe had less than three or four conversations when it comes to dating.
Hmm.
I mean, politics with dating.
Hmm.
But in DC, it comes up almost all the time.
Yeah.
And people who are maybe, you know, a little bit leaning more to the right are afraid to say in DC, yeah, hey, I am in fact a Republican, because people now hear Republican and they automatically think you're MAGA.
Yeah.
And I personally believe that there is a distinction
Yeah.
between
Oh, yeah.
somebody who's just conservative, more conservative in their beliefs, and like I've called like MAGA almost like far right wing. And I do think there's a difference.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But it's kind of like people hear like, oh, you're not my political party. And then it's like no, I can't.
Yeah.
Like, and it's just like, that's not always the case now, but I can't, you know, date for you. So
Yeah, like people using very strong words to describe someone who maybe is slightly to the left, slightly to the right, and they're like, "Well, I'm not that." It's like a communication thing. I don't know. Yeah, it's all like tale as old of time. I feel like.
and then
you ever
goes round and round.
Do you ever see in DC people that maybe like are employed by a party that they don't necessarily agree with or vote with?
Yeah, I actually do. I have a few friends who lean left, who do work for Republican House people in the House, the Senate, and I have friends who are conservatives who work for Democratic senators, congressmen, and it's kind of like at the end of the day, they're there to do their job, and they've worked for different people in Congress, and it's like you handle your responsibilities and you just keep it moving. And they might not necessarily agree with what their, I guess, person is doing, but at the end of the day, they're there to, you know, handle the responsibilities, pay their bills, and keep the lights on, really.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and I figured that would be the case. Okay, at what point do you think someone is like, you know what a catfish is? We all do at this point. At what point do you think somebody is a catfish? And what I mean by that is, sometimes it's kind of like, you know, we all know that there's the MTV version of a catfish, old man, you know, pretending to be a hot chick for whatever reason. But, you know, a lot of times it's like, you know, a catfish is used to describe a person who is using their own photos in some capacity, or, you know, they're being themselves, but in a way that maybe doesn't represent them. And, you know, sometimes it's kind of like there's a fine line between, you know, you want to put your best foot forward. At what, you know, what's the line of, you know, this person is a catfish to you?
It's a good question. I think that the distinction is when there's a large discrepancy in terms of what you're seeing via the app and what you're seeing in person. Now, if somebody's using pictures from 10 years ago where maybe they were a different body type, a different hair type, a different whatever, and they look, you know, really just different, like externally, I do think that could be, you know, considered like catfishing, because if someone had all pictures with full head of hair and then you see them and they're bald, it's kind of like, okay, well, that's not what you were expecting. Or maybe their body's gone through transitions in a good or even potentially a bad way, and it's kind of like, okay, that's not what you were expecting. And I kind of had like a tough time with this because people say don't judge a book by its cover. But when you're on the online dating platforms, you almost have no choice.
Yeah, you don't.
Because that is entirely the basis. You look at the picture and then you almost figure it out from there. I want to say that it shouldn't be that way, and I do agree, but that's just the reality of what it is.
Yeah.
And that's how we have to move forward, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because, yeah, and I think I say that more so because I think there are sometimes you see TikToks. Like, I know in one of my earlier podcast episodes, we got a question like this where people, you know, maybe they've, you know, doing a date story time, they've gone on a date and they are very surprised that the person sitting across from them is confused by their appearance or something else about them that they feel like, you know, they accepted a date under different pretenses. Like the letter that we got earlier, and it's funny because Eve had to like shared something about like a similar situation she was in, but someone who you know, she felt she looked exactly the same, but she dyed her hair brown. You know, her pictures are recent, but she went from blonde to brown, and then, you know, goes on the date. And this is not Eve, this is the letter writer. Goes on the date, and the date is like visibly like, you know, I thought you said you had brown hair, or I thought you said you had blonde hair. You had blonde hair in your pictures. And she's just like, do I do a whole new photo shoot in my new hair? Like, I didn't think it was a big deal, because to me, like, I don't think about hair color, but some people are like, you know, guys and hair color, you know how there's guys where it's like blondes, or they got the type or something. But it didn't occur to her that she was doing something deceptive. And like, because part of me is like, when I think catfish, I'm like, there's probably some like, you typically think there's got to be some intent there, you know, like, you know, I'm going to win them over with my personality, but there's, you know, there is, I think, room for someone to unintentionally, like, think they're putting their best foot forward. They think whatever change isn't a big deal. Maybe they're just not self-aware. Like, you know, I still look like that. Like,
I mean, yeah, those are the kind of things where where the gray kicks in, because of course there's like the traditional catfishing, like this person's using someone's completely other photos, and you're essentially putting on a persona that's not you. And people are finding pictures on, you know, Google or someone else's Facebook, and you know, marketing that as their profile, and meeting people. So when a person shows up to go on a date, and it's like, who are you? You're literally completely a different human being. But like, that's where the gray comes in. That's pretty, you know, black and white. That's just not you.
Yeah.
But exactly. But then when you have those type of situations, it's like, okay, well, now it's a little bit more interesting. It's not always so cut and dry, and there's going to be, you know, that nuance and room for conversation. Exactly.
And I think based on just context clues from this letter, I question if this might be the case, just based on what he wrote. So I'll read the letter, and let's give him some advice.
Do it.
So, mailbag, went on a date with a girl who didn't look like her pictures. What to do? Recently went on a date with a woman who didn't look at all like her pictures. I'd always heard stories about that, but had yet to experience it myself. It was jarring. Her profile had clear pictures, some full body, so it wasn't just me being lazy. She was at least 60 pounds heavier in person and just looked different. Unsure how else to put it. I think mostly due to my surprise, I stayed the full date and was polite as I'd be with anyone, but at the end said I was tired to avoid any moves to extend. I thought I'd be angrier about the deception, but mostly just felt bad for her. It's been a few days and I've already gotten I had a great time, we should do this again text, and I've been short back. I don't want to see her again and plan to send a rejection either way, but do I tell her the real reason why? Maybe it's just because I recently saw Baby Reindeer, but I feel like someone who could misrepresent themselves that much could be unstable, where it may make more sense to just get away from them. On the other hand, maybe it would help her improve with whoever she goes on a date with next. What do you think? And if I give a rejection without feedback, do I be honest if she asks? Have you seen Baby Reindeer?
I have.
Whew.
That
is a show that it ended up being so much more than I would have expected in the best possible way. But oh my God, every single men's issue. That is very important to watch, I think, for everyone.
Yeah, you know, this situation that you referenced is, well, for starters, they can't utilize Baby Reindeer as their frame of reference, because ultimately that is an extreme. But I do think it is important for them to, you know, be true to themselves. And if they're not interested, they should just share that with that person. However, personally, I would not share well, you're a lot heavier and you're like this. I personally wouldn't do it, because ultimately I'm all but certain this person probably knows, and they're probably, you know, self-conscious about it, or maybe that's something they're actively trying to work on. Who knows? They could have a medical issue. We don't know. But if the person's not interested, that's fine. That's their right, because ultimately that person, right or wrong, does deserve somebody who wants them, and vice versa. That's, you know, life. And I think they should just be honest with themselves and say, hey, you know, I enjoyed meeting you. However, I'm not feeling, you know, the connection, and I don't, you know, think we should go out further. And they don't have to really expand upon it from there. Now, the person might ask, but that's, you know, I guess up to ultimately they should do what feels right to them. I just personally would not.
Yeah, because I think either way, like, you are allowed to feel upset. You're allowed to, you know, not want to date this person. You do not owe them sympathy, even if, you know, whatever their situation is. You do not owe them empathy. You do not owe them, like, coddling or, you know, another date, anything like that. You're allowed to feel deceived. You're allowed to reject them. Where I kind of get, like, you know, the person didn't look like their pictures, I think, you know, a lot of times I feel like when you have these, like, catfish light situations, like, the ones that are intentional, the ones that truly hope to, like, win you over, like misrepresent
Yeah.
themselves and win you over with their personality, like are more subtle than that because they know they're being deceptive. Like the ones that people describe that are super egregious, like they also tend to describe that person being like, you know, visibly uncomfortable, distracted, like shy. Like there's no personality to win someone over with, which is kind of, I don't know, like, and I say it just because as I've gotten older, like I know people who have like, you know, struggled with mental health, they've gotten depressed and things, their appearance changes and quickly, and they are not aware, like, maybe they start eating a lot more and gain weight. They stop working out. Maybe they stop eating altogether and they lose weight. They stop shower. They're not aware of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like that doesn't mean you owe that person a date or hand holding or something. But I would be very cautious to go, if you're gonna say that you don't look like your pictures, like do it without assuming intent. Like you tried to deceive me, blah blah blah. Like I would do,
Yeah, that's
if you really want to. It's like you didn't look, I was expecting something different, like something like that. I would avoid, like, because like I said, yeah, the ones that I feel like that, you know, people are intentional. It's like, you know, the 41-year-old who knows that people round numbers and they say that they're 39, or it's the, you know, 5'10" who says 6 foot. Like it's like the stuff that, you know, could be passable, but the ones that are very egregious, I think, and like the reason I say like, you know, is not to like spare this person, but for like yourself, like you could be the first person that is telling this person who is maybe in a weird mental state, you know, maybe they don't have, if they had close friends or family members around, like, you know, this is probably something they would hear from them, but maybe they don't. This is a person you only want to get away from, and you might be the first person to tell this person, you know, you don't look, you look like shit, and like, not only that, you're a bad person for it, and like maybe you like, and I don't want to like say the baby reindeer thing, but like, you know, you could be walking into a snake pit that, you know, and all you want to do is get away from this person. I would only recommend, because I don't believe in the whole like pay it forward with advice or feedback that people didn't ask for. The only time I would ever say like to give someone feedback is like if it makes you feel like, it makes you walk away feeling better. Like any sort of rejections about you. I also think like I didn't feel a spark is not a lie. Like maybe that you know what goes into that spark, but you didn't feel a spark. That is a safe catch-all for a first date.
Yeah.
So I would like, if you are gonna say, you know, you give a reason like, oh, you didn't look like your pictures, I would phrase it like that. I would, if you don't want to say that, I wouldn't. And I think you don't even have to tell them if they ask. Like it's just, you know, this was a first date that was uncomfortable. Like I think it is kind of jarring when people they end up on you hear about catfishing all the time. You go without it, and then all of a sudden you get it. It's like, whoa.
I think though that is one of those situations where truly I think less is more.
Yep.
Because ultimately it's like the more you say, the more things can go left, the more things can be misconstrued, misunderstood, misinterpreted, you name it. And ultimately you don't want to potentially trigger the person, and maybe like I said, weight is a sensitive area for them, or whatever the potential situation may be. And ultimately it's one of those situations where almost no matter what you say, for the most part, there's just so many different ways in which it could go left.
Exactly.
So it's kind of like I would just try to do the best and avoid, you know, they say prevention beats cure.
Yes. And
just try to avoid something versus, well, no, I didn't mean that. I'm sorry. Just please save yourself the trouble.
Yeah. And this, like I say, this is not about, you know, oh, we got to hold the hand of the catfisher, the deceptive catfisher. Right. It's more about protecting your own sanity. Like, you want to get away from this person. Like, this isn't like a direct report who like you want to help like turn the ship around. It's a person you want to get away from. And like, you could be saying something that gets you entrenched into a conversation you weren't prepared for versus getting away.
Yeah. And you could have all the proper intent in the world, and next thing you know, you're in an all-out argument with this person, and it's kind of like you've almost done the opposite now.
Exactly. No, that's a good take. I'll jump to the next one. Have you ever been catfished? And how did you react to it?
Not necessarily, but I mean, I did do, well, I can't even say it was catfish, but I remember it was like 2 or 3 years ago. Wow, yeah, time flies now. 2025. And I had gotten an email because of my, you know, TikTok page, and they had said, "Hey, we love your content. Like we're doing like a blind date kind of series. for like this internet show. I'd never heard of it, and I was just like, why? What the hell? I have a free Saturday afternoon in a week. Like, I'll go. And they said that there was going to be something remarkably unique as how they worded it about my date. And I'm like, okay, I'd never looked up the show before in my life, so I had no idea what to expect. And when I got to the date, we met at this burger restaurant in Capitol Hill in DC. They were of shorter stature.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what to expect. So that was, kind of jarring when I was like, oh my God. And I would just say I felt almost like shook. Like I couldn't like get my head like off of like that. Because for me, I'm like, oh, they're different. What are like? I was like, maybe they're born into a family of like 20. I don't know. Maybe they have like a very unique job. Like I work for a circus. I don't know, something stupid.
No, they had like a physical disability.
But it was something physically about them that was different. Traditionally, they had said, well, I looked up the show after the fact, and one of the shows was somebody was like an adult film actor or actress. Like that was like the remarkably different thing about them. So I was like, oh, what? Like, why couldn't that have happened to me or something silly? But it was kind of funny. But yeah, it was unique.
Yeah.
Sure.
That was learning. Like that's either way, it was an experience. I think you've told me about that. Like they were very pleasant. It was a pleasant experience overall. It was just a surprise when it happened.
Absolutely, it sure was.
Yeah. Mailbag. They still have a friends with benefits. I, female 29, have been on a few dates, casual hangouts, texting daily, had sex several times with male 31 who I met on Hinge. We also have mutual friends, though. Since about 2 months ago, I thought everything was going great and was upfront how I was looking for a serious relationship. He said he was looking for the same. But the other night, we were in bed having conversation, and the topic switched to past date or ex horror stories and generally just talking about our dating experience. I jokingly asked, how have you survived these streets for so long? Because he's been single for 4 years, and was surprised when he answered, well, I've had a friends with benefits and that's helped. I asked for clarification on who this person was and when he last saw her, and he replied, she's a friend from his old job that happened, kind of a few years ago that continued to this day. He said he would definitely see more of her when he wasn't talking to anyone, but they last got together 3 weeks ago. We'd been already having sex at that point. I was furious. He seemed surprised I was upset, saying I shouldn't worry about her because their thing isn't serious, it was never going to be, and she knows the deal. He said his plan was always to end what they were doing when he met someone he wanted to be serious with, adding that 3 weeks ago he was still not sure about what direction we'd go, and part of the reason he hadn't been in touch with her since is because he realized he wanted to be serious with me. He said we weren't in a relationship, so these types of things are kind of fair game, and I wasn't expecting you to be exclusive with me right away either, and I never asked and didn't set expectations about exclusivity, so he thought it was a don't ask, don't tell kind of thing. He also adds he gets STD tests quarterly and used a condom with her, in addition to me, saying he's always kept everyone's safety in mind. I went to bed without speaking to him, and he left the next morning but texted a long apology and explanation saying he wants to keep seeing me because I'm the type of girl he sees himself settling down with. He defended himself, saying he hadn't been on any other real dates or even logged into Hinge since meeting me, adding his friend with benefit situation is nothing and has always been separate to him dating to find a relationship which he wants. He said his situation is totally normal nowadays, and that plenty of his friends with wives and girlfriends kept casual flings going or were still going on other dates as they were in early stages of dating or meeting serious partners. I said I needed time to think on this. All other things were going well. It's really the only thing this is a red flag for. But I can't help but feel like this is a lot of red flags combined into one. I feel like there was a lot of lying by omission and excuses made up on his part that could show up in other places later, or even if his friend with benefits situation is really what he says it is. I'm at a loss on where to go from here. Would you advise ending this? If I choose to move past it, what are some ways to set expectations that this isn't okay going forward?
I definitely think this is one of those situations where having the conversation is extremely important because ultimately you can't hold somebody to a set of rules that they didn't know they needed to adhere to.
Yeah.
And it's not the most ideal thing that she may want to hear. Mm-hmm. However, it's one of those things that if she chooses to move forward with this gentleman, she does need to have, hey, okay, this is how I feel. I would like to be exclusive moving forward. XYZ is what will work for me, and does that work for you? And he could share how he feels, and if they're on the same page or in alignment, then now we know. But if she doesn't feel that way, or he doesn't feel that way, or she doesn't want to move forward, then, that's just what it will have to be. But ultimately, if she expected him to be exclusive and they never had that conversation and he didn't know, or vice versa, then it's kind of like not fair to blame that person. Now, some people might make that choice on their own volition. Hey, I met somebody, I'm going to make that choice on my own. But ultimately, that is still the choice that they made. And there's still that possibility that the other person might not have made that same choice. Because you did it doesn't necessarily mean that they will. And I think a lot of people at times, I mean, it happens, we're humans, we get into our emotions, you know, run high, might lose sight of that.
Yeah. Because I see like two schools of like ways of thinking with that. Because like there's part of it where it's like he said something aloud that like, you know, people kind of do have this don't ask, don't tell, where, you know, people, you know, you're in the early stages of dating someone, even if you like someone, like there are some people where, you know, some people it's like they meet a person they like and they're just like the idea of going onto a dating app or like, you know, starting some like continuing to see or starting to see someone new after you've met someone you decide you really like, it just feels weird to you. Like if I really like someone, I wouldn't be interested in something else. But there's some people where it's like, you know, that it's everything's a slow burn for them. They kind of need to have, they don't want to get tunnel vision. That's how they date. And like, you know, people don't really reveal that or say it out loud, but sometimes it's like if you point blank ask somebody or if it comes up, it kind of does. And like, you know, no expectations were set. And, you know, some people just date differently. Like there's part of that where I'm like, you know, did this kind of come up in a natural way? I mean, it kind of did. Like, I mean, you're talking about like past relationships and stuff like that. So there is a little bit of like that part of it, but I think where I would feel like weird is just how he described this situation. Like, you know, this ongoing friends with benefits, you know, she knows the deal. She like kind of saying like, there's a second class citizen over there. And like, I don't, just kind of the way, like, I don't know, I feel like guys aren't really categorizers like that or labelers. And the fact that he like had this very organized way of describing it kind of made it feel like, you know, he's maybe had to set that maybe this is a person who's pining over him and settling for, you know, fuck buddy situation because it's what they can get. He doesn't like her. But just the fact that he like had this, you know, it's a friends with benefits, blah, 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 like not the type. I don't know. And so for me, like, I feel like there's sort of this, because I've had other friends that they tell me about like a guy that they're seeing who tells them like, you know, they got rid of the friends with benefits or like, oh, you know, I used to hook up with this person, but she was never the type. And it's sort of like, it feels like the guy thinks maybe it's a compliment. Like, oh, you're a marriage material. She's just some hoe over there. And like, I've never like, it's not attractive when a guy does that. Like it's not like you know, you won. It's kind of like, you know, you disregarded someone else's feelings so that you could satisfy your own. Like, because usually it's like they're describing a person that, you know, wanted a like I don't. So kind of having like, oh, you know, there's a random second class citizen over there, like kind of using all the words that sort of hint at like this is a person who maybe likes him, and this is all she can get. Like, and you know, maybe he knows that, and he's still continuing this thing. Like, you know, down the line, like even if, you know, he gets rid of her, this is going to be a person who, you know, cuts corners for himself. Like, I don't, so that kind of thing is just like icky to me more than like the, you know, they had a life before you or like, And
you know, and that's very possible. I mean, quite frankly, I think the whole situation just screams messy. And it ultimately might be a situation where they might be better off like almost like saving themselves now type of a situation, because it doesn't really feel like, to me, I don't know, hearing the story from an outsider, it doesn't feel like this outside situation is going away anytime soon. It's almost going to be like that, like lingering like elephant in the room type of thing. And it's kind of like, you don't want to, like, no one wants to get into a relationship with looking over their shoulder. No one wants to. And I don't know, it kind of does feel just very like troubling. And it does feel like that it's almost like the things you ignore now come and bite you later type of thing. Potentially. Now, I could very well be wrong, but I definitely would, if I was this person, take a long, hard look at it and really, you know, think about what they are going to do. Because it's like that, and like the kind of doubling down, like, oh, well, you know, everyone does it, like blah blah. Like she's like, don't worry about her. Like, if there was sort of a way that, you know, you maybe have a few glasses of wine, it kind of comes out like, oh shit, you know, like I did kind of have this thing, and like this person's upset, like, and you actually like the person, you want to like see them again, like that's, you don't turn around and be like, she's not the type and you are. Like, it's more like, you know, hey, I'm sorry, I didn't know, we didn't talk about this. Exactly.
Like,
so
I don't know, like, you don't go and just make I don't know, like that. So that would be the thing with me, and it does scream like there's a mess, like that, just kind of going out of his way to defend it. Sort of, it feels like the speech he's giving her about the friends with benefits is something that like a person tells a friends with benefits to be like, this is never going to be a thing. So it feels messy. Like I wouldn't be surprised if, like, you know, if she continued this and then, you know, that crazy the friends with benefits pops out of the woodwork. You know, the second they go,
possible.
you know, they go official. Like, I don't know.
You know, it's very possible, and you always see situations of like athletes or actors, reality influence guys, girls going official with somebody, and like the Pied Piper, everyone starts jumping out the woodworks. Oh, this person flew me out 2 years ago. Oh, this person and I went to dinner a year ago, 6 months ago, whatever, insert time here. And it's like, if this person had not gone public or what they call it, hard launch with this new individual, you would not be saying anything. And now all of a sudden everyone's like, oh, and it's like, that's why for me personally, it's kind of like a tricky game to play when you do that, because now all of a sudden it's not to say you were lying or cheating, but then people are almost feel like, oh, it's time to like almost like get my get back if they felt led on or lied to, or their time was wasted, X, Y, and Z. And it's like, man, I don't know.
Because like sometimes like something I've seen, and I have been on, you know, some sides of this like years ago, as I would like get in kind of relation, like as I like got in relationship, not my current one, but like a past one where it's like, you know, you maybe have recently, you know, let somebody, like you said, you know, hey, this isn't, I'm not looking for a relationship. Like you maybe meet it, and then maybe you meet someone quickly, and it's like, oh, that's where this person went. This person lied to me or something like that. Or they said they weren't looking for a relationship,
like,
and then
surprise.
boom, like 2 weeks later, like, you know, people grow and change over time, but like sometimes that just kind of thing happens. Have you ever met someone or you even been this person yourself who delays some sort of hard launch because there's loose ends that are too recent?
Yeah. It's happened. And well, a little side note, it kind of reminds me of like the people who go onto like the podcast because they were dating or talking to a guy or girl who goes on like a bachelorette type of TV show or like a Love is Blind. And it's like, I went out with this person 3 weeks before they left for filming. And it's like, it's always like, I swear every season of these shows, it happens. Rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. But back to your question, I had definite, you know, situations where I've had opportunities, you know, not to get into the names, to go on different, you know, shows where dating was, or being in a relationship was, you know, the focal point. And it was almost like,
and you can't tell the person, I'm going to be on this, I'm in the casting process.
Or I'm considering, so it's like, okay, when do I stop going out with this person? Do I say something? Do I hope they dump me?
Like, you kind of have to say, I'm not looking.
Was just rooting. So like, there was a point in time, especially as I was getting really close and getting really close and getting really close to the finish line, where people would say, hey, you know, I had a great time, and I would just be like, hey, no problem, I totally understand. Internally, I'm like, yes, but like, I'm not going to tell them I wasn't actually upset about it. I was a little disappointed because ultimately the opportunity was never going to be a guarantee until it's a guarantee. But on the flip side, I was like, well, if this does work out, then at least this is something I no longer, my conscience is clear. They ended it. I did not end it with them. So it was kind of like that, like kind of touch and go type of thing. And that stuff messes with your head. I'm telling you.
No, I'm sure it does. Have you ever been, like, cause you kind of touched on something. Do you feel like it's true that either you've done this, but like guys hoping that a relation, like either, you know, kind of hoping the other person ends the relationship, or even doing kind of subtle things to provoke someone else to end the relationship, versus being, you know, preferring to be the dumpy than the dumper for kind of other, like, you know, as much as it sucks to be the dumpy, but like, you know, kind of putting yourself in a position to be the dumpy so you're less evil?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely not proud of it. I haven't done things like to induce them to do it, but there definitely have been, like, especially when I was younger and maybe, you know, of less maturity, less self-confidence, just, you know, different factors in my life that I've, you know, actively, you know, sought to work on, that I did hope that they would do it, because I just didn't have the courage or whatever, the strength to do so. So when they finally did do it, it was almost like you feel like,
fuck yeah.
And it's like not right to even do that, because ultimately, if you don't want to be with somebody, you should not be with them. And that's not fair, regardless truly of how you feel. It's still not fair to that person. to almost just be there, like going through the motions.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a really tough situation because ultimately there's always like who wins the breakup, but in reality, no one truly wins the breakup.
You both win or you both lose, or it's just neutral. Like,
yeah. Because ultimately you're each going to take
you're on the same
lessons
team,
from it. You're going to have your battle wounds. You're going to have the things that like hurt you and that you want to wish that like that had never happened, or you want to grow and learn from the experience. But ultimately it's kind of like, what can you do from that experience moving forward and just take it from there, I guess.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
So, yeah.
Yeah. This has been a good episode, Owen. I'm so glad you're back in
has.
town. I'm excited to go to... Have you been to Red Ash? Red Ash is known for having a great happy hour. Like, it's like an all-day Sunday thing when they do it. It's very good.
Hip, hip.
Red Ash is fantastic. I'm so excited to go. I can't recommend them enough if you're ever in the Austin area. It's right downtown. Anyway, everyone.
Get a table.
Yeah. It's hard to get a table nowadays. Thank you for listening to this episode. I hope TikTok stays where it is. This might come out after that TikTok ban. But, Owen, all you peasants, again, always a pleasure. All right. Bye.